For most of my life, I believed that if I sacrificed everything for my family, they would at least remember who I was. Turns out, I was wrong. Not just a little wrong, gut punch wrong, staring at your own reflection, wondering who you even are anymore, kind of wrong. And the worst part? It wasn't strangers or enemies that made me feel that way. It was my own son. And his wife, whose smile could slice through glass if you stared too long. But before we get there, before I tell you how I uncovered something so cruel, so calculated, that it almost destroyed me, let me take you back. Because this didn't start with a cup of coffee. It started with a question. A very expensive question. Before we go on, if you've ever given your all to someone and got stabbed in the back for it, please tap the like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. You're not alone, and neither am I. Now, let me tell you what happened. My name is Diane Whitmore. I'm 58 years old, a retired hospital billing coordinator from Wichita, Kansas. I grew up just outside of Wichita, on a flat stretch of road where tumbleweeds danced like drunk ballerinas in the Kansas wind. My parents were simple folks. My mama worked at a local diner called Rosie's Grill, and my dad drove a school bus for Sedgwick County schools. We didn't have much, but we had dignity and faith, and you never asked for more than your share. That's something I tried to pass down to my son, Nathan. God, I tried. I raised Nathan on my own after his father, Rob, passed away in a tractor accident when Nathan was only 7. I can still remember the moment I told him. He just stared up at me with those watery hazel eyes, his father's eyes, and said, "Does that mean you're in charge now?" I nodded. I was, and I stayed in charge for the next 2 decades. Bills, braces, baseball tryouts, high school hormones. I weathered it all. I skipped lunch for months to pay for his senior trip to Orlando. I worked night shifts at the hospital while he slept, just so he could afford tuition at Pittsburgh State. He never even knew. That's love, right? Quiet, invisible sacrifice. Now fast forward to 3 weeks ago when Nathan called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, Mom, can we come by? I need to ask you something." We was him and Camille, his wife of 4 years, a dental hygienist with a symmetrical face and a personality that came in exactly 2 flavors, sweet when she needed something and dismissive when she didn't. I hadn't seen them in almost 6 months, not since Easter brunch, when Camille asked me if we could switch the ham to tofu because she was trying to eat cleaner. I should have known something was off by how warmed his tone was that day on the phone. Nathan was never much of a talker, and definitely not one for asking. I could hear Camille's voice faintly in the background, all coos and sugar. "Of course, baby. Come by any time." I cleaned my little ranch house from top to bottom, dusted off picture frames, lit a candle in the guest bathroom, even made my famous apple cinnamon muffins, Nathan's favorite since he was 10. They pulled up in that shiny black Tesla of theirs like a spaceship landing in a wheat field. Camille was in high heels. Who wears heels to your mother-in-law's house? We sat at the kitchen table. The chairs still had that faint squeak from when I bought them secondhand back in 2011. I poured coffee, served muffins, tried to keep my hands from trembling. And then Nathan cleared his throat and said, "So, Mom, Camille and we're thinking about starting a business." He reached for her hand. "It's a wellness cafe, organic smoothies, cold brews, herbal tonics, really trendy. Camille's got the whole brand mapped out. She's been working on it for a year." I nodded slowly. "That sounds interesting." Camille smiled, all teeth. "We'd be the only place like it in town. There's nothing else like our concept. We've already talked to a realtor. The spot is perfect, right next to a yoga studio." She slid a glossy business plan across the table. "We just need a bit of help, financially, to get it off the ground." My stomach tightened. Nathan looked me square in the face and said, "We need about $100,000, but we know that's a lot, so we thought we'd ask you first before we take out a high-interest loan." I blinked. Once, twice, and then I laughed. Not loud, just a small broken noise from the back of my throat. Because for a moment, I thought he was joking. I mean, $100,000? From me? The same woman who clips coupons, shops at Aldi, and still uses a flip phone because smartphones feel too fancy? I looked from Nathan to Camille and back to Nathan, and I realized they weren't joking. They were expecting this, like it was natural, like it was owed to them. I swallowed hard. My mouth suddenly tasted like rust. "I can't give you that, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's my retirement. That's my security. That's all I have." Silence. Nathan didn't say anything first, but Camille let out this little exhale, like she'd been slightly inconvenienced. Nathan leaned back in the chair and crossed his arms. "You always say you saved for me." "I did. I saved to raise you, not to bankroll some cafe you might give up on in a year." Camille's smile vanished. "Wow, okay. So much for supporting your son's dreams." Nathan stood up. He didn't even finish his muffin. "Let's go, Cam." I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat like gravel. The door slammed. The car reversed down my gravel driveway without a word. And I just stood there, still holding the empty coffee pot, still hearing my own pulse echo in my ears. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling fan, wondering how I had raised a son who thought I was his ATM, wondering what Camille had said to plant that seed, wondering if maybe I was the problem. By morning, I had resolved to let it go, to pray on it, to give them space. But 2 days later, that same space exploded in my face, and it started with a call from Mara, my neighbor across the street. "Diane, I don't want to get in your business, but is everything okay? I saw Camille at your place this morning. She was in the backyard. Looked like she was pouring something into that bird bath you love." My stomach dropped. "What time was this?" "Just before sunrise, maybe 6:15. She had a travel mug and a small container. Didn't stay long." My chest tightened. "Thanks, Mara. I'll check it out." I walked out back, the grass still wet with dew. The bird bath glistened with something oily. And nearby, I saw it. My coffee mug. The one that always sits on my patio table. It was upside down. And it smelled bitter. Wrong. Not like Maxwell House. Like herbs. Chemicals. Like someone had stirred poison into a memory. I picked it up, my hand trembling. My mind flashed back to Camille's cold smile, to Nathan's arms crossed, to the silence. Something was happening. Something beyond a rejected loan. And deep in my gut, a cold, hard truth began to take shape. They weren't just disappointed. They were plotting something. And whatever it was, it had already begun. I wish I could tell you I marched straight over to Nathan's house that day, demanded answers, and set things straight. But that's not what happened. Instead, I sat on my back patio in a lawn chair older than my knees and stared at that empty coffee mug until the sun hit high noon and burned right through the Kansas sky. I kept turning it over in my hands. Camille had been here. at 6:15 in the morning with a travel mug and a small container in my backyard near the bird bath, touching my cup. And it wasn't like her to come by unannounced, especially alone, especially at that hour. I picked up the bird bath and sniffed it again. A weird, herbal stench curled into my nostrils. Sharp, earthy, like medicine gone wrong. And that's when a thought crept into my mind I never thought I'd have about anyone in my own family. Was she trying to hurt me? I shook it off. No, I was spiraling, getting paranoid. Maybe she was just dumping out some old tea or coffee. Maybe she felt bad after our fight and wanted to apologize. But something in me, a tiny flickering alarm I hadn't felt since Rob's accident, kept whispering, "No, Diane, trust your gut." I didn't say anything to Nathan. Not yet. Instead, I drove to Dillon's, the grocery store off Harry and Rock Road, and bought one of those $29.99 home water testing kits. The guy at the checkout gave me a look. Probably thought I was being dramatic. Maybe I was. But I took that cup and poured just a bit of what was left from the bird bath water into the vial. The test turned orange. That was not the color it was supposed to be. I double-checked the chart. Contaminants detected. Further analysis required. I stared at the little plastic strip like it had just diagnosed my soul. The next day, I called in a favor. There was a lab tech named Renee I used to work with at the hospital. We weren't close, but she owed me for covering her shifts during her messy divorce 5 years back. I called her up and said, "Hey, hun, don't ask questions, but can you test a water sample for me off the books?" She paused. "Is this about your health or someone else's?" I hesitated. "Let's say, potentially mine." Renee sighed. "Bring it in. I'll take a look." I dropped it off in a clean plastic bottle and told her I'd bake her a pie if she got me results fast. 2 days later, she texted me. "Diane, we need to talk." We met at a booth at Town and Country Cafe, halfway between our homes. Renee walked in wearing scrubs and a look I'd only seen once before, when she had to tell a patient their husband wasn't waking up. She didn't even order coffee. "Diane, the water you gave me, it had traces of belladonna." My stomach dropped. "Wait, like deadly nightshade? Isn't that poison?" "Yes," she said. "In small doses, it can cause confusion, blurred vision, dry mouth, and increased heart rate. Larger doses, hallucinations, coma, death." I blinked. Jesus. Renee leaned in. "Whatever you're involved in, you need to be very careful. Someone wanted you sick, or worse." I went home and sat in silence for hours. All I could hear was the humming of my old refrigerator and the clock ticking above the microwave. Camille, my son's wife? The woman I once hugged and welcomed into my family? Was she trying to poison me? No, that couldn't be. This was real life, not some Lifetime movie. But the facts were stacking up, one cold brick at a time. And then, like a switch had flipped inside me, I remembered something. Camille had always offered to make the coffee. It started innocently, back when they used to visit more often. She'd always say things like, "You sit down, Diane. I'll handle the coffee." Or, "I brought my own beans. I know how sensitive you are to bitterness." God, how had I been so blind? I pulled out my journal, the one I kept for budgeting and recipes, and started flipping back through the months. Little notes I'd scribbled in margins. Felt dizzy after Sunday brunch. Maybe skipped lunch too long. Had that weird headache again.
Camille brought matcha cookies. Tingling in hands last week. Ask doc if blood pressure meds need changing. Suddenly, they weren't harmless footnotes. They were evidence. That night, I sat on the couch, lights off, just staring out the window. A memory came back to me, one I hadn't thought about in years. Nathan, age 9, hiding under his bed after I refused to buy him a Game Boy. He had screamed, "You're the meanest mom ever," and kicked the wall so hard his toe bled. I had bandaged him up, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "One day you'll understand I only say no because I love you." Now, almost 30 years later, I was still saying no. And my own son had brought poison into my backyard. I decided to act. The next morning, I got dressed in a sharp navy blouse, the kind I used to wear to staff meetings, and drove over to their house. A nice new build in Eastboro. Camille's white Lexus sat smugly in the driveway. Nathan answered the door. He looked surprised to see me. "Mom? Can I come in?" He stepped aside. The house smelled like lavender candles and overpriced wood polish. Camille appeared in the kitchen, her mouth already stretching into that fake frosty smile. "Diane, what a surprise! Want some coffee?" I smiled back. "No, thank you, Camille. Actually, I came to talk." She hesitated. "Everything okay?" Nathan looked between us, sensing the tension. I sat on the edge of the beige couch and said calmly, "Someone poured belladonna into my bird bath." Camille stiffened. Nathan frowned. "What's that?" "Poison," I said, locking eyes with her. "Someone came into my backyard 2 mornings ago. At 6:15 a.m. I have a witness. They left behind a coffee mug, my cup, and bird bath water testing positive for toxic herbs." The room went still. Camille's face twitched, just once, like she hadn't prepared for this version of the script. I don't know what you're implying." I smiled tightly. "I'm not implying anything, sweetheart. I'm stating a fact." Nathan stood up, pacing now. "Camille, you went to Mom's house that morning." She turned to him. I just wanted to smooth things over. I thought I'd leave a peace offering, some of that herbal blend I've been drinking." "You poured it into the bird bath?" he snapped. "I didn't think she'd drink it." "But you put it in her coffee before, haven't you?" I said softly. Silence. Then Camille barked out a laugh. "Okay, you two are being ridiculous. Belladonna is used in homeopathy all the time, in tiny, harmless doses. It's not like I dumped a gallon of bleach into her lemonade." Nathan's face turned white. "You've been drugging my mom with poison herbs? Are you insane?" Camille's voice rose. "It wasn't poison. It was for her anxiety. She's always so tense. I was trying to help. Natural supplements. You said yourself she gets overwhelmed." That's when something in me, something old, something buried, snapped. I stood up, my voice low but sharp as cut glass. "You think I'm some frail old woman you can manipulate and drug me for a business loan? You think I wouldn't notice if I started forgetting things or feeling foggy? You were laying the groundwork to make me look unstable, weren't you?" Camille's face contorted. "Oh my God, you're being dramatic." Nathan just stared at her, frozen. I grabbed my purse. "Don't worry, I'm not calling the police. Yet. But I am documenting everything. From here on, every interaction, every visit, every damn cup of tea will be recorded and tested." I looked at Nathan, and for a brief second, I saw a flicker of guilt on his face. Not just fear. Guilt. I turned and walked out. But just as I reached the door, Camille called out behind me, her voice low and icy. "You should have just given us the money. None of this would have happened." That night, I couldn't sleep again. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened a small box from my closet. Inside were a few old savings bonds,
A faded photo of Nathan as a baby, and a handwritten letter from Rob, written just days before his accident. "If anything ever happens to me, take care of Nathan, but don't let anyone take advantage of you, not even him." I pressed it to my chest and cried, because the truth was, it wasn't just Camille who betrayed me. Nathan had stood by. He had watched. And that realization, that was the part that hurt more than any poison. But it wasn't over. The next morning, I got a call from Detective Lena Marshall from the Wichita PD. She said, "Ma'am, I think we need to talk. Your name came up in a very unusual place. Are you familiar with someone named Camille Whitmore? There are few things that can make your stomach fall through the floor before your coffee even brews. A phone call from a detective at 7:08 a.m. is one of them." I was sitting at the kitchen table in my robe, halfway through peeling an orange, when my cell buzzed. "This is Diane." A clear, firm voice answered. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Detective Lena Marshall with the Wichita Police Department. I believe you might be familiar with someone named Camille Whitmore?" I froze. The orange peel dropped from my hand onto the counter. "Yes," I said carefully. "She's my daughter-in-law." A pause. "Ma'am, I'd like to ask you a few questions. In person, if you're available." My mouth felt dry. "Am I under investigation?" "No, ma'am, you're not in trouble, but your name came up during a separate inquiry. We believe you may have information related to an ongoing case involving identity manipulation and financial irregularities." That sentence hit like cold water across the face. Identity manipulation? Financial irregularities? I agreed to meet her at the station, not because I had anything to hide, but because I had a terrible feeling someone else did. The precinct was a gray slab of bureaucracy off Lincoln Street. The inside smelled like burned coffee and old floor wax. I hadn't been in a police station since Rob's accident, back when they called me to identify his wallet. Detective Marshall met me in the lobby. Mid-40s, pressed shirt, tight bun. Her eyes were the sharp kind, like she saw everything even before you opened your mouth. We sat in a private interview room. She clicked on a recorder and said calmly, "I'm going to show you something. Please just tell me if you recognize the woman in this footage." She slid a laptop across the table and hit play. It was security camera footage, a woman in a dark coat and sunglasses entering a senior center. Then the video jumped. Same woman leaving 15 minutes later with a clipboard. Detective Marshall clicked pause. "Is that Camille Whitmore?" I leaned closer, and my blood turned to ice. It was Camille. Her gait, the high ponytail, the way she pulled her sleeves down over her wrists. But why was she at a senior center? I looked up. What is this? The detective folded her hands. "That footage is from Ridge Valley Senior Living, 2 towns over. Camille was seen entering the facility on multiple occasions, signing in as a volunteer. Nothing unusual, except we discovered she was using different names each time, aliases." My mouth went slack. "She's been visiting residents with dementia," the detective continued, "and according to staff, occasionally offering to help them organize their paperwork or call their relatives about finances." I shook my head, numb. "You think she's been, what, stealing from them?"
We suspect she was helping herself to their personal information, bank info, social security numbers, possibly even posing as family to redirect funds. We've identified at least 2 victims whose accounts were altered within days of Camille's visits. I could barely breathe. And my name came up? I whispered. The detective nodded slowly. Yes, your name, address, and partial social security number were listed as a next of kin on one of the fake forms she submitted to a private financial firm. It triggered a red flag when the resident's real daughter came to update her father's file. That's when your information popped. My stomach turned. So she was planning to make it look like I was involved? That's one possibility. Or she could have been setting you up as a fallback, a patsy. She used just enough of your data to raise questions, without making it look too obvious. She's careful. I let that sink in. This woman had come into my life, married my son, smiled in my face over holiday dinners, and then turned around and tried to frame me for financial crimes. I should have thrown that coffee mug through her window when I had the chance. What happens now? I asked, trying to keep the quake out of my voice. We're building a case, Detective Marshall said, but we're still gathering evidence. Camille's slick. No direct withdrawals tied to her, just a lot of gray areas. What I can tell you is this. If you notice anything missing, anything strange, anything you don't recognize in your bank records, you call me. She slid a card across the table. And keep your eyes open. This woman isn't just manipulative. She's dangerous. I drove home in silence. Didn't turn on the radio, didn't stop for gas even though the needle was scraping E. My mind was spinning. All this time, it wasn't just about the money. It was about control, about Camille replacing me piece by piece, undermining my health, slipping poison into my routine, taking over my son's heart, and, if she could, my bank accounts too. And Nathan? Where was he in all this? Was he really that blind? Or was he part of it? That question lodged in my chest like a splinter I couldn't get out. That night, I poured myself a small glass of wine and sat at my computer. I pulled up my online banking, hands shaking just a little. And there it was, a recent login attempt from an unrecognized device 2 weeks ago. I hadn't seen that alert. But Camille had been in my house. She knew where I kept my passwords. She could have easily taken a peek when she went to the bathroom or when I stepped out to check the mail. I changed every password I had. Bank, email, medical portal. I locked it all down like a vault. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went digging. I searched Camille's name through old databases, social media, anything I could access. Nothing suspicious popped up at first, but then I stumbled onto a scrubbed Instagram account with a username I recognized, at CamSag Wellness, her old account, long abandoned. I clicked. Only 14 posts remained. One of them was a photo of Camille on the beach in California, taken 2 years before she met Nathan. The caption read, "New name, new life. Leave the mess behind." My skin crawled. New name. So she had reinvented herself. There were no tags, no geotags, no friends. But in one of the photos, a mirror selfie, I noticed something reflected in the background, a framed diploma on the wall. I zoomed in. The name wasn't Camille Whitmore. It was Savannah Lee Bartlett. I called Detective Marshall the next morning. She confirmed it. Camille used to be Savannah Bartlett. Her records were sealed after a legal name change in 2019, just months before she met Nathan at that charity gala. No arrests,
no convictions, but 2 restraining orders filed against her by former roommates in different states, both for financial coercion and alleged identity abuse. She changed her name, changed her town, reinvented herself again, and now she was trying to erase me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to Nathan's house and drag him outside by the ear like I used to when he lied about skipping school. But I didn't, because I realized something far more painful than anything else I'd learned so far. Nathan wouldn't believe me. Not yet. Camille had been whispering in his ear for years, feeding him her poison in more ways than one. She had turned him into a stranger. If I came at him now with this, he'd defend her. Again. Just like before. I needed proof. Real, undeniable, fire-in-the-hands proof. So I decided to set a trap. I called Camille that afternoon and left a voicemail with just enough bait to pique her interest. "Hi, Camille. I've been thinking about your cafe idea. I might have found a way to access
Some funds from Rob's old life insurance policy. I don't want Nathan to get his hopes up yet, but let's talk. Just you and me. I'll text the details." I waited. 4 hours later, she texted back, "That's amazing, Diane. Let's meet tomorrow morning. Just us girls. I can bring your favorite coffee." I smiled. Just as I thought. What Camille didn't know was that I had already arranged to meet her at a neutral location, a small cafe in Derby that just happened to have audio surveillance. And thanks to a favor from a retired coworker who now worked in cybersecurity, I'd also be wearing a discreet recorder under my cardigan. But what happened in that cafe? What Camille said was worse than anything I had prepared for. Because by the end of that meeting, Camille didn't just admit to poisoning me. She hinted at something else, something even darker, something that made my blood run cold. She leaned in, smiled over her oat milk latte, and said, "You're lucky, Diane. I like to make people disappear quietly. But you? Well, I might have to make an example out of you." I didn't blink when Camille said it. "I might have to make an example out of you." She said it so calmly, like she was offering to rearrange my garden or cancel brunch plans, not sitting across from me in a cafe confessing to psychological warfare with a smile in her eyes. And I smiled back, because what she didn't know was that every single word, that sentence especially, was being recorded. There were 3 cameras in that cafe placed perfectly to catch her face and her voice, and tucked into the strap of my bra was a micro recorder, quietly capturing everything she said while I sipped chamomile tea with shaky hands and a steel spine. But I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to understand, to finally, fully see the woman my son had fallen for and the predator who had infiltrated my family. Camille leaned back in her chair and crossed her legs like she owned the place. She wore a pink blouse too soft for her words and a gold charm bracelet that jingled every time she flipped her hair. "You know, Diane," she began, "when I first met Nathan, I thought you were harmless. Just a plain old widow, stuck in her casseroles and dusty morals. I figured you'd fade into the background eventually." I said nothing. Just smiled, nodded, let her talk. "But then you started getting possessive, nosy, controlling. Always with your budgeting books and your little, 'I just want to help' voice. You made him feel small." Her eyes sharpened. "And you said no. That's where you screwed up."
I could feel my nails digging into my palm, deep crescents forming in my skin, but I kept my voice steady. "You're mad because I wouldn't fund your cafe." She gave a quiet laugh. "No, I'm mad because you underestimated me. People like me, we don't ask twice." The audacity, the calculated ease of it. I wanted to reach across that table and slap the smug off her face, but I didn't, because I needed her to keep talking, to keep unspooling the web. She stirred her latte. "You think I needed your money? I don't need anyone's money. What I needed was for you to disappear, fade out, slowly, naturally. A little confusion here, a fainting spell there. You'd fall, break a hip, end up in assisted living." She paused to take a sip. "I was going to make sure Nathan insisted you get round-the-clock care, that you couldn't be trusted with finances. And then you'd sign a few papers, transfer a few rights." She tapped her nails on the table, like it was a song she'd rehearsed 100 times. "But you didn't go quietly, Diane. You had to get clever. And now, well, I guess we're playing a different kind of game." By the time I walked out of that cafe, I felt like I'd aged 5 years. But I had what I needed. A recording of Camille admitting to her manipulation, her plan to isolate me, and her intent to take over everything in my life and erase me in the process. I drove straight to Detective Marshall's office, recorder in hand. She listened to it twice. The second time, she didn't even flinch. She said, "I can work with this. It's not a direct confession of attempted poisoning, but it's coercive, threatening, and combined with the belladonna test and the senior center reports, we've got a clear case of psychological abuse at minimum." "Will it be enough to arrest her?" I asked. She hesitated. "Maybe, but these cases are tricky. Unless she directly harmed you or committed financial fraud tied to your name, we're walking a fine line. What we need is a paper trail, something concrete." I nodded, even as my stomach dropped. Camille was smart. She never used her own name for anything illegal. She floated above the law like oil on water, untouchable, invisible. But I had one last card to play. Nathan. He hadn't spoken to me since I confronted them in their living room. Not a single text. No, "Sorry, Mom," no, "Let me explain." But I knew him. I raised him. And I knew if I could just shake loose the spell she had him under, get him to see her for who she was, he'd come back. Maybe not all at once, but enough. I printed out everything. I had. Screenshots from the Ridge Valley investigation, the lab report with the belladonna traces, and Camille's old Instagram account with the Savannah Bartlett alias, and a typed transcript of her words in the cafe. Then I mailed it. In a manila envelope. No note, no handwriting. Just the truth. 3 days passed. Silence. Then, the 4th morning, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Nathan standing on my porch. His eyes were red. His shirt was wrinkled. No jacket, no Camille. I stepped aside without a word. He sat down at my kitchen table, the same chair he'd sat in when he first asked me for $100,000, and buried his face in his hands. She lied to me. I stayed quiet. She told me you were slipping, that you'd been forgetful. She said you'd probably left something in the bird bath by accident. He looked up at me, hollow. She said she was just giving you herbal support because your doctor said your nerves were getting worse. She told me you'd co-signed some documents, but when I looked for them, they weren't in the folder, she said. And when I checked our joint account, His voice broke. She transferred money from my savings. Almost 30 grand, gone. I felt the sting of those words deep in my chest, but I didn't let it show. She's dangerous, Nathan. I know, he whispered. And the worst part is, I helped her. I defended her. I let her isolate you. We sat in silence for a long while, until finally I said, she's been planning this for a while. You weren't the first. He looked up. I handed him the detective's card, but you can help make her the last. That afternoon, Nathan and I met with Detective Marshall together. He agreed to wear a wire. We worked out a plan. Nathan would confront Camille at home about the missing money, but press her, gently, to open up about everything. If she admitted to accessing my accounts or misleading him about my mental status, it would be enough to begin formal charges. But things didn't go as planned. That evening, Nathan texted me one word: abort. I panicked, called him. He picked up, whispering, "She's gone, packed everything, took her suitcase and laptop, left a note. She's gone, Mom." Gone? Just like that? I drove to their house. The place was a mess. Drawers open, bathroom cabinet empty, makeup gone, laptop charger missing. The only thing she left behind was a note on the fridge, written in blue ink. "You should have just played nice. C." Detective Marshall showed up 20 minutes later. She confirmed what we already knew. Camille had vanished. Again. A ghost. A woman with no past, no fingerprints, and now no trace. The next week felt like a movie in slow motion. Marshall submitted the case for formal investigation. Nathan froze the joint accounts, changed the locks, filed a restraining order. But no one could find Camille or
Savannah, or whoever she was now. She was gone, and we were left behind to sort through the wreckage. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought maybe I'd get my peace. But 2 weeks later, I got a call from Ridge Valley Senior Living. A quiet-voiced woman named Marla, head of admin, said, "Mrs. Whitmore, one of our residents, Mr. Gerald Talley, passed away last night. In reviewing his financial documents, we found something odd." I frowned. "What is it?" "Well, there's a signed authorization filed last year transferring his life insurance beneficiary to someone named Diane Whitmore." My heart stopped. "What?" She continued. "It lists your name, address, and partial SSN, but it was submitted months ago, before we flagged Savannah, for identity issues." I sank into my kitchen chair. You don't think I began. "Oh, no," Marla said quickly. "We don't think you had anything to do with it. But the insurance company wants to speak with you. They've launched a fraud inquiry." My ears rang. Camille hadn't just been setting me up. She had started assuming my identity. And if she'd done it once, how many other documents were out there? How many fingerprints had she left under my name? I always thought losing someone meant death. That one last breath, the stillness of their chest, and then absence. But losing yourself, your name, your identity, that's a slower death. You watch pieces of who you are slip away, one forged document at a time. And the worst part is, you're still alive to feel it. When I got that call from Ridge Valley, I thought it was a misunderstanding. But by the time I'd hung up, I knew. Camille hadn't just tried to erase me from Nathan's life. She had tried to become me. The next morning, I sat in a sterile office under flickering lights, clutching a printout of the forged life insurance document. My name, my address, my signature. Except I'd never signed it. "Do you see this loop here?" the claims officer asked, pointing at the bottom of the page. I nodded.
That's a forged D. The loop is off, too wide. Your DMV file shows your real signature. This is a very close imitation, but it's not you. I stared at the paper, bile rising in my throat. Can she cash in the policy? I asked. No, the woman said, almost too kindly. We flagged it in time, but this wasn't the only account she changed. My hands turned to ice. She accessed 3 of Mr. Talley's accounts using your information, savings, stock dividends, and a funeral prepayment? But I didn't... We know. You're not under investigation. But we do need to ask, do you have any idea where she might have gone? I shook my head. Camille was gone, vanished. But her damage was everywhere. By the time I left that office, the sky was gray and I felt like I was shrinking inside my own skin. My social security number was in the wind. My name was now a tool she used like a crowbar, prying into bank accounts and insurance policies. But the worst was what came 2 days later. I'd gone to the pharmacy to pick up my prescription, my blood pressure pills, tiny, pink, essential. Sorry, Miss Whitmore, the clerk said, scanning my file. It looks like your insurance declined the refill. I frowned. What? He tapped the screen. Says you changed providers last month. I didn't change anything. He looked nervous. Might be a clerical error. I can call the insurer? Please. 15 minutes later, he was back. You're no longer listed as a covered member on your plan. According to the file, you terminated the account and switched to a new provider. I swallowed hard. What's the new provider? He showed me the screen. All Care Mutual. Policyholder, Diane Whitmore. Email, whitmore.diane@protonmail.com. I don't have a Proton Mail, and I'd never heard of All Care Mutual in my life. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, every light in the house on, shaking as I combed through my bank accounts, my credit report, my medical logins. She'd touched everything. Small things, quiet things. A credit card request I didn't make, a billing address changed to a P.O. box in Tallahassee, a login attempt from a device I didn't recognize. Camille hadn't just vanished. She was operating behind me, as me. And there was nothing scarier than the realization that a part of her, maybe the most dangerous part, was still living inside my life. Detective Marshall was sympathetic but realistic. She's smart, and she's done this before. Identity fraud, insurance manipulation, but this is the first time we've seen her latch onto someone actively. Usually, she waits until they're dead or institutionalized. I stared at her. She was preparing to make me disappear? Marshall nodded grimly. And now she's working from the other side. That Proton Mail account? That's encrypted. It'll take time to trace. How much time? She sighed. Too much. I started sleeping with the lights on. Not because I thought she'd come back in person. I knew she wouldn't. Camille didn't need to show up to ruin your life. She just needed a phone, a laptop, and a little stolen data. And I'd given it to her, unknowingly, in the form of trust. Nathan took it hard. When I told him what happened, he paced my kitchen like a man unraveling. I brought her into our lives, he muttered. I let her get that close. You didn't know, I said gently. He looked at me hollow. I should have. I wanted to hug him, shake him, tell him he wasn't to blame, but deep down, I didn't fully believe that either, because love is a choice, but so is blindness. 3 nights later, I was standing at the sink, scrubbing a casserole dish, when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Normally, I let those go, but something in my gut said answer it. Hello? The line crackled. A delay. And then, Diane? The voice was faint, strained. Yes? This is going to sound insane. My name is Rachel Vega. I don't know you, but I think we've both been hurt by the same woman. My heart stopped. Camille? Silence. Then, she called herself Maya when I knew her. She was my sister's roommate, but she latched onto my father, took advantage when he got sick. I gripped the phone tighter. What happened? She isolated him, got power of attorney somehow, drained his accounts. We tried to stop it, but she had fake documents. Police said they couldn't prove anything. My knees buckled, and I slid into a kitchen chair. She disappeared, Rachel continued. Same way you said. One day she was there, the next, poof. How did you find me? There's a subreddit, people sharing scam stories. Someone posted a screenshot of her, said she went by Savannah this time. I recognized her face. Then I found your name. She paused. I'm sorry to intrude, but I think I found her again. My breath caught. Where? Miami, she whispered. She's using the name Lena Caldwell now. She's working at a boutique hotel. I only saw her once, but I'm sure it's her. A beat passed. I think she's targeting someone else. I didn't sleep that night. Rachel sent me a photo. Grainy, distant, but it was her. Camille, now Lena, walking out of a hotel lobby in a white sundress, laughing with a man who looked easily 20 years older. Same tilt of her head, same golden charm bracelet on her wrist. A new name, a new con, a new victim. And suddenly, I understood something. This wasn't just about me anymore. This woman didn't just destroy lives, she collected them. And she wouldn't stop until someone stopped her. Detective Marshall filed the Miami tip, but like before, it was slow-moving. Jurisdiction issues, identity uncertainty, no concrete evidence of wrongdoing in that state yet. And that's when I made a decision. If the system couldn't stop her, I would. I'd play her game, step onto her board, but not as prey, as bait. I began crafting a new version of myself. One Camille wouldn't recognize, a distant cousin of Diane Whitmore, if you will. I created a fake LinkedIn profile, hired someone to create a website for a fictional nonprofit called the Horizon Foundation. It focused on senior empowerment, legal advocacy, and trust protections. Basically, the exact kind of thing Camille would want to infiltrate. Then I leaked it, casually, quietly, through the same subreddit Rachel found me on. I used a throwaway account,
Posted a story about an anonymous philanthropist looking for consultants with backgrounds in elder care and legal advisory. The post included a link to a submission form, one that captured email addresses and device fingerprints. 5 days later, a submission came in. Name, Lena C. Email, caldwell.lena@consultantmail.com. Resume attached. I clicked it. There she was. New haircut, slightly darker, but the same eyes, the same cunning smirk, the same predator in a different costume. She'd taken the bait. I stared at the screen for a long time. And in that moment, something in me settled. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival. Not just mine, but everyone she hadn't reached yet. And this time, I was ready. There's a moment, right before the wave crashes, where everything holds still. The sea goes quiet, the air thickens, your body knows what's coming before your brain does. That's how I felt the morning I walked into the hotel lobby in Miami. It was polished, sunlit, full of tourists in flip-flops and straw hats. No one looked twice at me. Just another woman with a soft blazer and a polite smile. But beneath my calm, a hurricane. And Camille, now Lena, was about to get caught in it. I'd arrived in Miami a week after she took the bait. Once her fake resume hit my inbox, I looped in Detective Marshall and the Financial Crimes Task Force. They'd been tracking her movements, but nothing stuck. Until now. With my help, we crafted a sting. I posed as a rep from the Horizon Foundation, a legit-looking nonprofit I'd fabricated to match Camille's target profile. We told her we were conducting in-person interviews for a grant-writing consultant, that our founder was keenly interested in people with unique experience in elder outreach. She bit. Hard. Agreed to meet at 9:30 a.m. in the hotel's coffee lounge. And there she was, sitting at a table near the windows, sipping a matcha latte and reading a hardcover she probably hadn't bought. Wearing a white blouse, subtle gold earrings, that signature open-shoulder confidence she wore like a crown. If you didn't know better, you'd never guess she was a con artist who'd spent the last decade stealing lives. But I knew. And today, so would everyone else. She looked up and smiled when I approached. That same serpentine smile, friendly but empty. "Hi, I'm Lena," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Diane," I replied evenly, locking eyes with her. Her smile froze. Just a second. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. Her pupils contracted. Her breath hitched. She knew. Not everything, not yet, but enough. She said slowly, trying to regain control, "You're not what I expected." "People rarely are," I said softly. "Shall we sit?" We did. I asked her about her experience. Let her talk. She had the gall to reference Nathan's name, said she'd worked with grieving families and understood the importance of trust. I almost laughed. The woman sitting across from me had robbed my husband of peace in his final weeks. She'd hollowed me out, worn my name like a borrowed coat, and tried to cash in on my grief. But now, she was cornered. She just didn't know how tight the walls had gotten. After 15 minutes, I excused myself. "Excuse me 1 second. I need to speak with my assistant." I walked out of view and gave the signal. Detective Marshall and the task force moved in. No drama, no yelling. Just a quiet, practiced arrest in the middle of a high-end Miami hotel, with 2 patrons recording from behind their croissants. Camille's face when they showed her the warrant, I'll remember that forever. Confusion, then fury, then something like relief. Because she finally knew it was over. In the days that followed, the charges stacked. Identity theft, insurance fraud, attempted forgery, unlawful access to protected financial records, mail fraud, wire fraud. The list felt endless. Turns out Camille, real name Kara Annette Loring, had been playing this game for nearly 12 years. 7 aliases, 5 states, at least 4 confirmed victims. But this time, her trail ended in handcuffs. Thanks to me. It's strange how quiet vindication feels. There was no parade, no dramatic courtroom moment with me pointing a shaking finger. Just a steady stream of emails, case updates, court dates. I testified by deposition. So did Rachel Vega. So did 2 others who came forward after my Reddit post. The case was airtight. She took a plea deal. 14 years, no parole. And when I got the final email confirming her sentencing, I sat on my porch, sipping tea, letting the sunset breathe against my skin. For the first time in over a year, I felt safe. I've changed since then. Not just in the obvious ways, like locking down my credit, changing passwords, adding 2-factor everything, but emotionally, spiritually. I used to see the best in people first. Now, I just see clearly, and there's power in that. It's not bitterness,
It's not cynicism. It's survival. Camille, Kara, whatever name she wore, didn't just try to steal my identity. She tried to erase the parts of me that believed in people. But in the end, that part survived. Bruised, but alive. Nathan would have been proud, I think. I like to believe he saw it unfold from wherever he is, that he knows I stood up, that I fought back. He used to call me the quiet storm. Said I wasn't loud, but when I moved, the whole earth felt it. Now I know what he meant. These days, I volunteer part-time at a support network for financial abuse victims. It's small, mostly Zoom calls and referrals, but it matters. Sometimes I share my story. Other times I just listen. Because when someone has been gaslit, stolen from, erased, what they need isn't advice. They need to be believed. And me? I'm good. Better than I was. Not because the storm passed, but because I became the storm. So yeah, that's my story. The time my late husband's caregiver tried to replace me, erase me, and cash in on my life. She almost won. Almost. But in the end, the quiet storm rose and she drowned in it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't rage, it's resilience. Becoming the version of yourself they never expected you to rise into. If you've ever had someone try to rewrite your story, I'd love to hear how you took your power back. Drop your justice tale in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, healing is a form of revenge. Stay strong.